Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, the Executive Director of the American Constitutional Rights Union and the ACRU Action Fund, as well as the Committee to Support and Defend America's Constitutional Conservative Veterans Organization. I want to welcome you to another episode of Live Free TV brought to you by the American Constitutional Rights Union. Also, just want to let everyone know in the Southeast Georgia coastal area and also the Northeast Florida area that I will be riding my motorcycle from here in Garland, Texas, down to Brunswick, Georgia, Saturday, July the 25th. Saturday, the 25th of July, we will be having a poker run, a veterans poker run to support the Golden Isles Veterans Village there in Brunswick, Georgia. It's a great organization. I toured and visited with them earlier this year. They are making sure that we provide shelter to our homeless veterans in tiny homes and getting them ready to get back out on their own 2 feet. So please join me for a veterans poker run down in Brunswick, Georgia to support the Golden Isles Veteran Village. I hope to see you down there Saturday, July the 25th in Brunswick, Georgia. Well, I guess we all know what is on everyone's mind. Everyone is talking about it. The market is reacting to it. You're starting to see the difference when you go to the gas pump, and that is the recently signed Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, I'm sure that many people have their different perspectives on this, but I want to share some of my thoughts and perspectives. And I think that, when I look at Iran, this is a country that has always been in the forefront of my military career and the time after the military. I came on active duty the 30th of October of 1983, which was 1 week after the Beirut barracks bombing, 23 October 1983, where 241 United States Marines, sailors, and a soldier lost their lives there due to a truck bomb, suicide bomb attack by Hezbollah, which, as we know, is a proxy army of Iran. When I look at what is happening with this memorandum of understanding, and I wrote about it in a piece that you can see at theacru.org in the Colonel's Constitutional Brief called The Ghost of 1938. And what do I mean by that? When I go back to 1938, the Munich Accords, when Adolf Hitler decided that he wanted to annex a portion of Czechoslovakia that was known as the Sudetenland. His grievance was that this was an area, and there was a border area between Germany and Czechoslovakia where there were ethnic Germans. And the thought between the English, the United Kingdom, and the French at the time was that maybe if we appease this, maybe if we sit down and try to come up with this agreement, maybe this will, satisfy the territorial aims and designs and desires of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi movement, Nazi Germany movement. Well, as we know, that agreement was signed. Sir Neville Chamberlain came back to the United Kingdom, and upon landing, he came out and gave a press conference, and he waved this piece of paper saying that I have this signed document from Herr Hitler, and there will be peace in our time. Well, it was less than a year later that Hitler overran Czechoslovakia. Then he continued on to Poland. And as we know, World War II got started. And the United States of America ended up coming into World War II, the December the 7th of 1941, the day that will live in infamy when Imperial Japan attacked the United States of America. And of course, America declared war against Imperial Japan, and Nazi Germany declared war against the United States of America. See, I understand the hope and desires to have peace in the Middle East. God knows that someone like myself and many other veterans who have served understand that. As a matter of fact, later on this year, the Desert Shield Desert Storm Memorial will be unveiled. That was my first combat operation in 1991. Then, of course, years later, 2003, I was deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom, OIF 1. And then I also, even after retiring, I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor to the Afghan National Army. So I've been in the Middle East and I've been on the ground and I've had to contend with and deal with Iranian influences being in Iraq or Afghanistan by way of some of their secret agents, as well as the explosive force penetrator IEDs, which are responsible for the killing and the maiming of thousands of American troops. I would hope that we could have a turning of the page in Iran. But the biggest concern that I have is that if you still have the exact same theocracy in place, who maintains the same militant, maniacal ideology, a tyrannical ideology, where they seek the return of a hidden imam, the 12th imam, the Mahdi. And in order for that to come about and they have their global domination, it will require an apocalyptic event to bring about or set in motion these events. That's why they want to achieve a nuclear device. And when you listen to them, I mean, 60 to 70% uranium enrichment, they're there. As a matter of fact, during some of these negotiations, the Iranians were quite forthright saying that they had enough to produce 11 nuclear weapons. So when they continue to say that we're not in pursuit of a nuclear weapon, we don't want to have a nuclear weapon, well, we've heard that time and time and time again, ad nauseum, ad infinitum. So, for what reason do we believe that this is going to be any different? Ronald Reagan once said that you had to trust but verify. When you're dealing with the Iranians, you cannot trust, and you're certainly going to have to verify. And to this point, they have proven that they should not be trusted. And they have never allowed us to verify anything. That's one of the reasons why we have had to contend with this nuclear program. But it's not just the nuclear program. It is also the fact that Iran is the number one state sponsor of Islamic terrorism in the world. As a matter of fact, earlier this year, a gentleman was convicted in New York City because why? Well, he was planning an assassination attempt of President Trump. He was an Iranian agent. And we also know that the same has been plotted against the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump. So these are not people that I think, as the Bible says, come let us reason together. I don't know if we can reason with them. When you talk about making a deal is a business transaction. That's not something that you have to seek to do with a very vile enemy that we see in Iran. As a matter of fact, it was Sun Tzu that said war is about imposing your will upon your enemy before your enemy can do the same to you. Now, I can sit here and I can talk about some of the things that I don't see very favorable with this memorandum of agreement. I know that we say that if they are not honoring this agreement, which now we go into 60 days of more negotiations and talks, so we're not even there yet. But what we do know is that the blockade has been lifted, so ships can leave and enter into Iranian ports. We know that they can once again start selling their oil on the open market. We know also that there will be an investment fund, an infrastructure investment fund, maybe not American taxpayer dollars, but there will be some 300 billion of these investment fund dollars that will go to Iran. But the thing is that what do you think that they will do with those resources? They have already proven that they care very little about their own people by way of executing some 30 to 40,000 this past January. And if we really believe that they care about infrastructure, improving the quality of life for the average everyday Iranian citizen, they have not proven to want to do that to this point. So I'm very concerned about, once again, we have gone down the path of being strung along. And will we be able to restart combat operations? It'll be very hard for us to be able to do that. Two things. Number one, the American people are now seeing the gasoline prices go down. The markets are reacting favorably. Do you want to reverse that? Especially as you get ready to go into a midterm election cycle, which, as we know, the Marxist leftist political opposition will use that against the president. But yet, on the other side, if we continue to see the belligerence from Iran, we continue to see this very obtuse behavior, which again, I don't see that changing because there has been no change in the hardline regime leadership of Iran. Where do we go from here? So, if I could have made some recommendations as an advisor to the president early on, one of the key things about a military operation is to continue to hit your enemy from all different aspects, to make sure that you keep them off balance. You get inside what they call their decision cycle. We call that the OODA loop, and you can look that up. How you observe, you orient, you direct, and you act against your enemy. Diplomatically, we should have been doing everything we possibly could to isolate Iran. And also, when it comes to information operations, we should have been doing everything that we could to try to create and foment a dissension between the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which kind of operates as their Praetorian Guard, if you know the old ancient Roman military structure that protects the regime, as opposed to the regular army, which, if we could have tried to create that association, that simpatico relationship between the regular army to the people who are disarmed, which is a good reason why we have the Second Amendment here in the United States of America. Maybe then we had an opportunity to create that ability to overthrow that regime and actually have the regime change that we were looking for. But the most important thing of that is you have to economically create those conditions by which that regime can collapse. And my concern is now that they're able to once again openly sell their oil on the open market, those revenues are going to flow right to the regime to continue to maintain their stranglehold of power over Iran and over the Iranian people, not and to include possibly supporting those proxy armies like Hamas, like Hezbollah, and like the Houthis. So if we could turn the clock back to when we started on 28 February, at some point in time early on when we were decimating their naval capability and capacity, decimating their Air Force capability and capacity, when we had the air dominance over the skies, that's when we should have taken the opportunity to go in and seize control over the Straits of Hormuz. Because we should be the ones in control of the straits. We should be the ones dictating the terms in the straits. And this is something that I had worked on as a young major in an artillery brigade back at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when we did a battle simulation of taking down Bandar Abbas, which is the Iranian city that's right there at the Strait of Hormuz. So that was back in 1997. So I'm quite sure we have contingency plans and operations that could have facilitated us dusting off the cover and implementing this plan. And the other thing is we should have seized Karg Island and separated this regime from their number one source of revenue, which is the oil and gas. And also, that puts a lot of pressure on some of the other neighbors and allies and some of the other members of this, what I call the 21st century axis of evil. We've done a great job in what you saw happen there in Venezuela. You don't hear any peep or any sound coming out of Venezuela. And more so, it has really put a peel back a layer of the onion against this axis of evil, which Venezuela, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, transnational narco criminal terrorist organizations, and Islamic jihadist organizations all together. So we have to continue to keep the pressure on them. And that would have been a great thing to do in seizing Karg Island. And with the capability that we have there in the region, with two carrier battle group strike forces, you have two Marine Expeditionary Units, Special Operations capable. You have Special Operations Forces that are there, and also a Division Ready Brigade from the 82nd Airborne Division. So you had that capability and capacity. Now, some people will say, oh, okay, Colonel, so here you are again, talking about hundreds of thousands in invasion force. No, I'm not. I'm not talking about what we did in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I'm not talking about what we did in Iraq or even, more so Afghanistan. But in the early phases of Afghanistan, what we did see was a shock and awe campaign, and that's what I'm talking about. Precision strike operations against key centers of gravity for the Iranian regime, which again is the revenues that enable them to maintain their stranglehold of power, and that comes from their oil and gas industry. So when you think about the fact that we've gone right back to where we were, yeah, the straits are open, but who is the one controlling the straits? The same guys. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I think that comes from a song from the rock band The Who. And so I think that that's something that we should have been looking at. Then, as well as we go forward, we need to understand that, to continue to put a lot of pressure on Israel. Israel is in a very dangerous neighborhood. And in that very dangerous neighborhood, they're dealing with Islamic terrorist organization, non-state, non-uniform belligerent organizations that are sponsored by who? Yes, you got it. Iran, being it Hamas or Hezbollah. Israel is not in a war or a battle against Lebanon. No. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure the Lebanese government would be happy to have the eradication of Hezbollah. And for us to suggest that maybe we should turn that over to Syria or someone else, that's not in the national interest of and the national security interest of Israel. Just the same as recently we just took out the leader of Trinidad, the Venezuelan narco criminal terrorist gang that has been, well, fomenting a lot of criminal activity here in the United States of America. And we did so rightfully because they are a non state, non uniform, belligerent organization, a transnational narco criminal terrorist organization. No different from Israel going after Hezbollah, which is not a state organization. No different from Israel going after Hamas. And if we continue to throw a lifeline to Israel, what we end up doing is we're throwing a lifeline to its proxies. Like I said, being at the Houthis as well. And also understand that the Houthis, they are in control of another very key strait, the Strait of Bar al Mandab, which is right there at the tip of the Saudi Peninsula that goes over to the tip of the Horn of Africa. And so we have to start looking at this strategically about, do we really want belligerents such as Iran and their proxy, the Houthis, to be in control of major sea lanes of commerce, SLOC, sea locks, as we call them in the military? Because right now they are. And as long as we continue to have them in control of those areas, they can continue to put pressure on the global economy and global shipping lanes, which, oh, by the way, if you're not careful, China can learn a lesson from this as well, and they can start to do the same thing in constraining the sea lanes of commerce, the sea locks, over in the South China Sea. We don't want to see a repeat of that. So I think it's really important that we look at this MOU and understand that it is just something that starts another conversation. And this is exactly what the Iranians want to do. They want to continue to drag this out. They want to continue to haggle and keep us on our heels. We lost a little bit of the momentum in this operation. Somehow we got to see how we can seize that momentum back, seize that initiative back once again. Because right now, in my assessment, the Iranians are driving this train. And I don't think that that's a good position for us to be in the United States of America. And look, once again, I want to say to President Trump, thank you, sir, for being the first American president to put pressure on Iran, to engage them militarily, because we know exactly who they are, what they intend. But we have to seal the deal and we have to close it out. Just the same as we sealed the deal against Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and fascist Italy in World War II. Because if we continue to have combat operations that are just done in half measures, and we never bring the enemy to the table, because now what Iran says is that we're not an enemy, we're an equal nation. And that's how we're going to sit at the table and continue to talk about these things. They are not defeated. And when you go into an operation, you got to make sure that you defeat your adversary, your opposition, your enemy. We still see a level of belligerence, a level of arrogance, because in the Middle East, in that part of the world, and I know a lot of people want to have peace in the Middle East, but the two things that they respect and understand more than anything else is strength and might. And if we don't meet them with the same type of resolve that they are willing to show, and the same type of commitment that they are willing to show, to include Islamic jihadists, which, if you haven't been paying attention, we got a problem with that on our own streets here in the United States of America. We don't want to go down the path of the United Kingdom and some of the other Western European countries. We have a multi front ideological battle that we have to fight. And a part of that ideological battle is kinetic as well. And so we here at the American Constitutional Rights Union, we support the president and we support his, well, the number one responsibility, the really only title that is mentioned for the president of the United States of America in Article 2 of our Constitution is commander in chief. And that's a tough job. But what any commander in chief has to understand, that we who raise our right hand to say that we'll support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that we will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that we take that obligation freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation, so help me God. We know the consequences. We know the ramifications. But the only thing that our men and women in uniform ask is, when you send us with clear guidance, send us with the ability to execute violently against our enemy, our opposition, our adversary, and making sure that we secure victory for the American people. We're in our 250th anniversary of our independence. The important thing for us is not to just focus on this year, America 250, but let's start thinking about America 300 and what we will pass on to our children and grandchildren. What will our legacy be? As I said, when I showed up at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, October the 30th of 1983, It was fresh in my mind about what Iran had done by way of an organization called Hezbollah. I don't want anyone, not my grandsons, to be sitting around years from now and still be thinking about Iran. Steadfast and loyal. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Live Free TV.